All right. My name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Steven Sinkler. It's July 24th, 2024. We're at the Wine Shack in Cannon Beach. Steven, thank you so much for joining us today. And the first question is, why wine?
Well, that's a great question to start with. I wasn't much of a wine drinker, and I fell in love with wine about, I'd say, 12, 15 years ago, and wine just became a passion for me and kind of all-consuming at a time. And so just looked for different things to do, and now here at the Wine Shack, it's my favorite thing. Wine's my favorite thing.
So let's talk a bit about life before wine then. Tell me about where you're born and raised and early life.
I was born in Green Bay, Wisconsin, raised in Green Bay. I was an Army brat, so spent time in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and Germany, and then I was in the military, and after that, a couple of corporate jobs. And when I fell in love with wine, I was living in Des Moines, Iowa. I went on a wine cruise in California, and I just couldn't believe what I was seeing and what I was listening to and the magic behind making wine. And as my wife and I were flying back to Des Moines, Iowa from the Bay Area, I'm looking online for wine schools in Iowa, and sure enough, Des Moines Community College had a wine program, and I enrolled the next semester at Des Moines Area Community College.
What was it about wine to start with that was so exciting?
You know, it was fascinating how you walk through the vineyards and you see these vines and you see these grapes, and then you go behind the scenes and you see the crush pad and you see the tanks and you see the barrels, and then you walk into the tasting room and you taste this amazing product, and you look and you're like, it started there, it was there, now it's here. It was like magical. It was like alchemy, turning one completely different product into another product, and I was just blown away by it, and I was captured by it, and excited to start studying this process.
So tell me about that. Tell me about diving into school.
Yeah, so it was a 3-year program, viticulture and enology. And so we'd study, in Iowa, you have completely different climate structure, you have completely different soil structure, and so you end up with different varietals that you grow than here in Oregon. And I'm learning about what soils and what grapes go with the soils and the climate, and then vacationing out here, and you see this disconnect between the two. But I just fell in love with the process, and my plan was really to open a winery in Iowa. And when I started, and I was going down that path, so taking enology classes and viticulture classes and volunteering on the weekends, working at vineyards and wineries, helping prune, helping, behind the scenes in the winemaking, and then coming out here and tasting Pinot Noir, I was like, oh no, I cannot make Le Crescent and La Crosse and Marquette and Maréchal Foch. It's about Pinot Noir. And so I'm like 2.5 years in this 3-year program, and I have to tell them, I am not going to be an Iowa winemaker. I'm going to be an Oregon winemaker. And they were just like, what are you talking about, And they couldn't believe what they were hearing, but I was just like, I gotta go, because there's something that I think is a much better fit for me. And that's how I changed my mind kind of midstream, going down this path of one direction, and all of a sudden it's taking a completely different direction. And my viticulture instructor, Randall Voss, he just could not believe what he was hearing. He and I were working on biodynamic programs in Iowa. There was no biodynamic program in Iowa whatsoever. And then, so we were gonna be the first. That all got canceled. And when I told my enology instructor, Paul Gospodarczyk, Paul's like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. He said he started at Dobbs. Mm-hmm. And that's where he, learned winemaking, and then he ended up in the Midwest. And so he's like, I totally get it. He goes, Pinot just grabs some people.
So after it grabbed you, what was the next step?
So finished that program, and I actually, a headhunter found me and moved me to Atlanta, so further away from Oregon. And I worked there for a couple of years. My wife was working for the Red Cross. I was working for Kaiser Permanente. And my wife called me one day and she's like, hey, my job just opened up. A partner job or a parallel job opened up in Portland. We can move to Oregon. And I was like, I am given notice. Tell me what I can give notice. And so we started working on the move to Oregon. And while that was happening, I found the wine shack for sale on Craigslist. And my wife and I had vacationed in Cannon Beach a number of times. We were familiar with Puffin Wines. We were familiar with the wine shack. We loved the wine shack. And I just walked in, I showed her the screen print of what I found for sale. Because I had been looking for wineries to buy in Oregon. I'd been looking for vineyards to buy. I'd been looking for job opportunities, and I just didn't find anything I really liked. And then I found the wine shack for sale. And so we proceeded to buy the wine shack. So that's how we got into it. Timing is everything, right? Yeah, because who knows if I hadn't found it, or we'd probably be in Yamhill or that area, Ribbon Ridge someplace.
So tell me about what this looked like when you got here.
So when we got here and we took it over, the store, the wine shack's been here since 1977, right? So I didn't start the wine shack, and I'm a caretaker for the wine shack. I'm the fourth owner. It was started by Dick and Mary Anderson, and their passion was French wine. So in 1977, there wasn't a huge Oregon wine industry, so it was a lot of French and Spanish and Italian wines here, and Oregon wines that were the wineries that were up and running and notable at the time. They were in here. They were represented here as well. But they ran it for owned it for 13 years, and then Cleve and Marilyn Rupert, who still live in Cannon Beach, they owned it for 13 years, and they put more, as the Oregon wine industry grew, they put more Oregon wines in here. And then Dean Raymond bought it from the Ruperts, and Dean is a French wine lover, so he put a lot of French wines in here. In fact, this area that is now all Pinot Noir was what he called his French corner, his French quarter, and it was all French wines, right? So when I bought the store, there was a lot of international wines, a lot of foreign wines, and not as much Pacific Northwest wines. He liked Pacific Northwest wines, but it wasn't his passion. French wines were his passion. And I can completely understand that. The amazing wines coming out of France. So, but it just didn't make sense to me as the premier wine shop in this town, which is a tourist town, and we have people all from around the country and from around the world. I just thought, man, they can get French wines anywhere. They can get French wines. I know I had a French wine store right down the street from me in Atlanta called Perrine's, just an amazing French wine shop. I didn't need to come to Cannon Beach, Oregon on vacation to find French wines, right? Or Spanish wines or Italian wines, no matter how good they were. So before making any changes, I kind of waited to see what was selling, what was moving, and what was not moving so much. And I found that it was really the Pacific Northwest wines that were driving the sales, because people would come here from Denver or Dallas or the Bay Area, and had read about a wine in Wine Spectator, a Pacific Northwest wine, and they were looking for it, right? And so I wanted to kind of meet that need, but also showcase the best from the Pacific Northwest. And so I would say over that first 6 months, it was an inventory change. And over probably about a year and a half, we completed that, because I didn't just have a, French wine sale. Just gradually, as bottles would move, I would replace them with local wines. Yeah. So that is different. We expanded on Puffin Wines. When I bought the store, there was a red blend and a Pinot Noir, and I sat down with the winemakers, and they're like, we're kind of focusing on our own brand, so we don't think we're going to make wine, these side deals anymore. And I was like, okay. So then I went on a search for the next iteration of Puffin Wines and who were going to be the winemakers and who's going to be that team. And we've since expanded it to 9 wines from 2 wines, and about 7 years ago, we had the opportunity to turn the other side, which had been a antique store, into a tasting room. The tasting room had been upstairs for years, for like 35 years. The tasting room was upstairs, maybe even longer. And It was always tricky asking people to drink wine and then walk downstairs. Every time somebody was going downstairs, I was like, please God, do not let them fall. I never told my insurance agent that's what we were doing, but now that we have the tasting room on the other side, it's more visible, it's street front. And we've got the 9 Puffin Wines and we're pouring them daily. So it's really been well received.
Tell me about the change of climate moving to Cannon Beach from where you'd been before.
Well, moving from Atlanta, which is hot and humid, to Cannon Beach, which is cold and rainy, it's a dramatic change, but it's really a welcome change because, like August in Atlanta is just brutal, right? It's 95 with 100% humidity, and even the pool is hot by then, right? The pools are warm, but moving here, if you can make it through winter, if you could survive January and February when it's a little bit dark and a little bit rainy and not a lot of people on the streets, you're fine because it's the summers are gorgeous here. Springs are nice, falls are nice, but the summers are gorgeous here. So we really enjoy this.
And what about the pace living here?
The pace is, at this time of year in summer, on July 24th, it's frenetic, right? We are packed. This town of 1,600 probably has 7,000, 8,000 people all driving and walking across the street in random places. And so you're trying to just, deal with the tourists. And that's fine. We're a tourist town, we're a tourist shop, right? And so we're very appreciative that they're here. But it gets really busy and it gets crazy in town from basically 4th of July to mid-September. It's crazy. And then we have shoulder seasons and it slows down a little bit. But as long as the weather's nice, people are coming from Seattle or Portland or other parts around in the Pacific Northwest, Walla Walla, and they're coming here on vacation and spend a week. And they all appreciate wine. I mean, people from Washington know wine, right? People from Oregon know wine. People from Idaho know wine. People from California know wine. So our primary markets for customers, they're all really knowledgeable on wine. And so we have something for all of them.
So obviously your wine background was in enology viticulture before you came here. Tell me about this aspect of it. What's different about selling wine? What did you have to learn?
Yeah, this was not the plan, right? Going to wine school and all of a sudden buying a wine store, that wasn't the plan. But it all fits really well because the passion is really wine, right? The passion never ended up being winemaking or vineyard. I wasn't a farmer, so that the passion really wasn't there. It was more just delicious wine, excellent wine, and so that carries over. So like when my staff and I go to these trade tastings, I break it up. Okay, you taste these, you taste whites, you taste the big reds, you taste the light reds, I'll taste, whatever. And then we'll get together and point out our favorite wines that we had. And my staff all has that passion too. And so then we all get excited about what's coming into our store. And we don't care big name, we don't care small name, it's excellent wine, right? And so that's really the connection point from the passion that was sparked was excellent wine to what it is right now in the store. I don't care if it's a big name winery, I don't care if it's a small name winery. If you look at what we have a mix of all, but what we have is excellent wines.
So tell me about getting to know the Oregon wine industry and about starting to discover what was going to go here.
Yeah, so I went to a lot of trade events. For the first, 5-7 years, I went to a lot of trade events. If there was a distributor or a winery that were having a pouring for trade, I was there and I was taking staff because I wanted to meet winemakers. I wanted to meet the people running these wineries and really I wanted to hear their stories and get to know them a little bit as we brought their wines in, because that's part of it. A customer comes in and they're like, oh, talk to me about this wine. Well, I can say, oh, I met the winemaker, I've walked the vineyard, and here's what I think of it, and here's the flavor profile, but let me tell you a little bit about the winery. And it really helps to sell wines knowing the background. So there was a lot of research In the first 5 to 7 years of going to those events, and then with COVID, everybody stopped all the trade events, so they're coming back slowly, and we'll get going on those again. But we went to a lot of those, and that includes staff. I think it's important to bring the staff because I'm not here every day, right? I'm here like 3 or 4 days a week, and then staff is here the rest of the time, and they need to be able to tell the stories of the wines and why this wine is on the shelf, right? We didn't just have a distributor come and go, hey, I've got a special on this wine, so if you could carry it, that'd be great, I make a bonus. No, none of that stuff. That's grocery store stuff, right? But here, this is hand curated by my staff and I.
So I'm curious about you obviously mentioned Pinot Noir grabbing you and bringing you here. Tell me about, as you started to explore these Pinot Noirs, tell me about getting to know Pinot Noir and what your impressions were of the wines and the people making them.
Yeah, so start with the impression of the people making them is that they're down to earth. For the most part, they're really down-to-earth people. They're really friendly people. They're collegial. They want to tell you the story. They want to tell you what they're doing and how, what they were doing and changes they made and what worked and what didn't work. They know that you're their partner. You really are their partner. We'll be telling their story to the consumer. We'll be recommending their wine. We'll be showing a customer their bottle of wine. And so I really enjoyed talking to the wineries, the winemakers, the winery owners, the tasting room staff one-on-one or in small groups to kind of get their story and really get to know them a little bit. And I've just found that they're very appreciative that you're in their winery asking them about their wines. Yeah. What I found about the wines is I love Pommard. So Pommard clone of Pinot Noir, that grabs me. So different clones that have more red fruit on them or black fruit on them, or, I'm like, oh, this is nice, and I can imagine that people would like that. But do you grow Pommard? Where's your Pommard clone? Because it's something about that earthy, dried herbs, dried leaves, mushroom Pinot Noir that really makes me think of Burgundy. Right, and I call it the grumpiest version of Pinot Noir because it doesn't have fruit. It doesn't make you like go, oh, this is so delicious with all this cherry and blackberry. It doesn't have that. It's like, wow, this is savory. This is earthy. I can really taste the vine on this. So yeah, so for me, Pommard clone just grabbed me.
So I'm curious about customers. Obviously, mentioned the Shack's been here a long time, a well-known place. Tell me about who shops here and what they're looking for in terms of a wine and in terms of a story.
Well, I would say that our customer base. It's interesting to see the customers that we had when I came through the door in 2012 are not, for the most part, the same customers we have now in 2024. The previous customers have kind of aged out, and so we see a new generation of customers, and it's exciting. The customers are coming in. They have an understanding of Oregon wine or Pacific Northwest wine, and they've heard of Pinot Noir. Right? They go, oh, Oregon, Pinot Noir, I want to try that. And so we have some for them to try. We bring winemakers in at different times for them to try that. But we love the opportunity to talk to them about other things as well. Boy, down in the Umpqua Valley, they're growing other things, right? What do you drink back at home? Oh, I like Syrah. Well, we have some really nice Southern Oregon Syrahs that maybe you should try as well, in addition to that bottle of Pinot Noir. And so the rule of thumb, or not the rule of thumb, but the thought about Oregon is Oregon equals Pinot Noir, but it's so much more than Pinot Noir. So we love telling that story as well. And then when they ask, oh, well, how much cab does the Willamette Valley make? Well, let me tell you about, Washington and Southern Oregon. Not much out of the Willamette Valley, so they don't really understand that, right? That our climate is not conducive to other grapes so much for ripening other grapes. So it gives us an opportunity to talk about other local wine regions. And I consider, Red Mountain and the Gorge and Walla Walla, I consider those local. wine regions, right? So we have that conversation and we talk about those, and we talk about where Puffin wines are made and where the fruit comes from, and we have those conversations. And by the time they leave, they're like, "Wow, thank you, so much for telling me about that. I'm from Dallas, and all I knew was Oregon and Pinot Noir, and didn't know about anything else." And so it's our opportunity to kind of give them an introduction into really what's going on here in Oregon.
Obviously, that's a big challenge for you to know all of those places as well. It's a big geographical region to have as a local wine. So I'm curious about outside the valley, about Umpqua, Rogue, Columbia, etc. Getting to know those places. How did you approach it, and what do you kind of look for to represent those areas?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I haven't been able to get down there as much as going through Willamette Valley, but I've really learned about those wines through the trade tastings and through wine competitions where I judge in wine competitions, and all of a sudden I'm tasting, Stephen Russell's wines, and I'm tasting Quaddy North wines, and I'm tasting, Schmidt family wines, and I'm, the Abasella wines, and these wines coming from those areas where I'm just like, oh my gosh, these are amazing wines, and then getting an opportunity to meet those winemakers and talk to them about their product. It gives me an opportunity to talk a little, with a little more background on what's coming out of those regions. Plus, then there's winemakers in the valley that are sourcing fruit from those areas, like Jonathan Oberlander at J. Scott. A lot of Umpqua fruit in his lineup. The first Puffin Rosé was made by Del Rio, the Grenache rosés, and those are stellar. I mean, Del Rio's making some really nice wines at really affordable prices. So had an opportunity to develop a relationship with that winery as well.
So wine competition judging. Tell me about how you got into that.
There is a competition here in Cannon Beach. It's the first competition of the year. It's called Savor Northwest, and it's held every March, like the first week in March here in Cannon Beach. My friend Gary Hayes is the director of that. He runs that competition, and Gary asked me to participate. And I think for 1 year I didn't judge. I moderated the panel. And so it was kind of like, let's see how Steve does, right? Let's see how good Steve's palate is. And went through, and you judge it, you score as well, but yours doesn't count, right? And then you kind of work with the judges, and they come up with a conclusion. But it was an opportunity for me to kind of learn about how wine competitions work and learn how to judge. And then since then, I've judged that every year. I've also judged for Eric Degerman a couple of times in his competitions that he has in Hood River and the Tri-Cities, and I've judged the Platinum, which is the championships up in the Tri-Cities in October. I've done that a couple of times. I really enjoy it, and it's an opportunity as a wine retailer to find out who's making gold medal wines right now, right? And it's a lot of small producers, because not all the big names want to go into competitions against little producers, right? Because they're expected to win. And sometimes when they find out here's this little Bluebird Hill Cellars out of Monroe, Oregon, that is just making amazing wines and outscoring them, they don't take too kindly to that, and so you get these small producers that are just making gorgeous wines. It's an opportunity for them to elevate and get additional exposure for their brand. And by judging, I see the results, and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all these small producers. I need to learn more about these guys and bring their wines into the shop.
How do you approach wine judging?
So it's all blind, right? We don't know who the producer is, but we know the flight. We know it's a Pinot Noir flight, and we know the vintages, right? So I'm looking for varietal correctness. I'm looking for, acid levels. I'm looking for tannin levels. I'm looking for finishes. I'm looking for balance of wine. I'm looking at the color of the wine. I'm looking for varietal correctness on those to an international standard for Pinot Noir. And it's interesting because some of our co-judges from Washington may not taste 500 Pinots in a year like my staff and I do. And so we've got this real deep database on Pinot Noir, and some of them not as much. And they're like, oh, there's no fruit on this one. Well, I'm going to downgrade that. I'm like, oh my gosh, Pomard Cologne. And I'm just going, please don't be Puffin. Please don't be Puffin. It just got beat up by the judges because we don't have any fruit on our Pinot Noir. If it's blackberry, it's blackberry bramble, right? It's the stems and the stalk and the leaves. It's not the berry itself that you taste there. So, but conversely, I don't taste 500 Malbecs. I don't taste 500 cabs like those guys do. So we have different strengths and weaknesses. The other thing I love judging with people that have different skill sets than I do or palates, because I learn from them. And I'll always, remember some of the judges that are like, there's not enough acid. I want more acid. And that tape plays in my mind when I'm judging, like, make sure you look for acid. Make sure you look for acid. And, I really enjoy working with those agents and seeing what they're looking for in those grapes and learning from them. Yeah.
So you mentioned Puffin. Obviously, interesting to have the wine brand come along with the wine shop. Tell me about Puffin, how it got started, and you mentioned only had a couple of SKUs when you took it over.
Right.
What were your impressions of it when you took it over?
So my impressions of Puffin were that they were good. They weren't great, right? And the label was great. I think the branding is great. I mean, that's Andrea LaRue out of McMinnville, who I think she was the premier label graphic designer for Oregon. She designed that. So when you go into her studio, you see all these big name producers, all these big name wineries, and these gorgeous etched bottles and all these things. And then there's this little Puffin label up there too, and you just realize we're in really good company. This wasn't a label that was made on a laptop computer, down in the basement. This was one of the best label makers in the country, I will say, graphic designers. And I love that label. I was glad that there was a Pinot Noir, red blend. Okay, it's a great start. But when the winemakers said that it really wasn't working, that they wanted to do something different, I was actually relieved. And we started the pursuit of a new winemaking team. And as I was going to trade events, I would taste all these Pinots, and I'm looking for the Pinot. I was looking for also the next Puffin producer. And the word got out, the Wine Shack is looking for a new Puffin Pinot Noir producer. And so I would get bottles shipped here, and I would brown bag them, pour them for my staff. And it was always nope. And I'd be like, oh, this happens to be your favorite winery, and this is your favorite wine. And really, you didn't want that? He's like, oh my gosh, and it was eye-opening. And then I was down in Lincoln City at a trade event, and I tasted Sean Allen's Pinot Noir, and he owns Pudding River Wine Cellars outside of Salem, between Salem and Silverton. And I was like, oh my God, this dude, and it's Pomard, right? It's Pomard-based Pinot. I'm like, here's what I'm looking for. Do you have any interest? And he's like, absolutely. And so the 2009 Pinot Noir was the first Puffin Pinot Noir or the first vintage of Puffin Pinot Noir that I was responsible for, and that was with Sean from Pudding River. And then I hung in there a couple of vintages with red blend until I could find another winery to work with. And similar thing, I was at a trade event, and I tasted this lineup of big reds from John Durthick at Lujan Cellars. I was like, oh my gosh, tell me more about what you do and how you do it. And John is a UC Davis grad, and he has just this amazing background in winemaking and really just knocking out beautiful, beautiful reds. He's got contracts out of Walla Walla and the Gorge, and so we just some nice big reds. But I wanted Pinot Gris, so I had Pinot Noir and I had a red blend, but I was like, okay, I really need Pinot Gris. I have to have a white wine. So I called Ray Walsh with Capitello Wines, and I'm like, hey, by any chance, do you know anybody that is interested or would be willing to make some wine for Puffin Pinot Gris? He gave me a couple of names, and I was kind of disappointed. I was waiting for him to go, I'd help you with that, right? Because we were starting this friendship. And I talked to those other people, and they're like, nah, it doesn't really work for me. Okay. I go back to Ray, and he's like, well, I could make it for you. And I'm like, dude, that's the answer I was hoping for, because he's an amazing winemaker. I don't know if you've interviewed Ray.
I have.
Ray is an amazing winemaker. I think he's the best white winemaker in the state. And his background, everybody knows Ray. Everybody in the industry knows Ray. So Ray he started with Pinot Gris. He now makes my Sauvignon Blanc and my Rosé and my Chardonnay. It's like, why mess with an amazing thing? Ray is going to be my white wine winemaker. And if we look at our white wines right now, Puffin Pinot Gris, gold. Puffin Rosé, double gold. Chardonnay, gold. Sauvignon Blanc, gold. It speaks for itself. You need to have an amazing winemaker like that. So Ray Walsh, Sean Allen, and John Durthick. That's the Puffin winemaking team. And they're all exceptional guys. They're very different personalities. They handle business very differently. But the point in common is amazing wine is what they come up with. So I'm very lucky to be working with those guys as a winemaking team. People ask me, well, why aren't you the winemaker? I'm like, dude, I cannot make wine like Ray Walsh. And that very few can. There's nothing I could tell Ray Walsh about winemaking. There's no way I can do what Ray is doing or what Sean is doing or what John is doing. There's no way. Those guys are really good. So I'm better off focusing on the marketing aspect of the brand and let them handle the making of the wines.
So when it comes to that, do you have what kind of say do you have? Do you give them a general direction, or do you just say make me good white wine?
Yeah, so I'm really so let's start with Sean. With Sean, he's making these beautiful Pommard-based Pinots. We'll go and taste them a couple of times and see how they're developing, and I'll do some barrel selections with him for Puffin, and that's about it. With Ray, I just let Ray go and do his thing, because Ray knows exactly what needs to be done. I like aromatic wines, I like expressive wines, and I like acid in my wines, right? And that, I think that would line up with what Ray does with wines. And with John, I'm looking for really kind of the typicity of the varietal. I want the varietal correctness. And I think John also focuses on that as well. The red blend we have fun with. He and I talk about what should we do with the blend. What do we put in it? It starts with a Syrah Merlot base, which is kind of an unconventional base, but you get some fruit, you've got some structure in there, and then we kind of mess around with, do we put Cab in there? Do we put Malbec in there? Do we put Cab Franc? Do we put Carmenere? So every year we come up with a new non-vintage blend. It's very different from the year before because it is based on what John has in the cellar at the time. And we have a distributor walking in right now. That's the fun thing about owning a store, is that I work with distributors, right? And I pull excellent wines out of their books. In the tasting room, we have a couple of kegerators. So we're pouring 4 beers. We have a beer lineup because it seems like in a group of 4 or 6 or 8, there's a beer drinker, right? There isn't one of them isn't a wine drinker. And so we've got a beer option for them. We have sangria, we have cider, something for everybody. We also have seltzer water. We don't do hard seltzers. We don't have those, but we have seltzer water in the tasting room. So we offer those things there. Try and make everybody happy. Otherwise, that one person's like, really? 5 wines on a tasting lineup? God, you're torturing me. So we give them a couple of beers and they're happy then, right? So
with the Puffin brand, as it's grown, what is the goal with it for you? What do you sort of want it to accomplish for you?
Yeah, I think what I wanted to accomplish with Puffin is just showing these people as they come in, the tourists as they come in, the locals as they come in, is that this is a wine that a brand. We have fruit from different vineyards, right? And Southern Willamette Valley, Central Willamette Valley, Gorge, Walla Walla, and they are kind of consolidated. The fruit and the different wines are consolidated under this 9 wine brand, showcasing the best of Oregon, the best of Washington here in this one lineup. And it gives us more flexibility because a lot of, you go into a Willamette Valley winery, into their tasting room, and there's a good chance they don't have a Walla Walla cab on the lineup, right? They're going to have their Willamette Valley Pinot, 4 single vineyard Pinots, and then a couple of whites in there. But we have the ability through John Durthick and his connections in Walla Walla and the Gorge to bring in Syrahs and Merlots and Malbecs and Cabs and all of these other fun wines. So I think that it gives us a little diversity of lineup. Plus, our tourists that are coming in, our customers coming in, they don't all want to drink 3 and 4 Pinots, right? They might be cab drinkers, so let's have a cab for them. And so that diversity of lineup really kind of lines up with our customer.
So you talked a little bit about sort of the growth of the shop. So tell me now, as you've had it for a number of years, it's your place now. The wines in here are all your choices. Tell me about the sort of the atmosphere and experience you're going for here. What can visitors expect? What is sort of what is the ethos of this place?
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do is demystify wine and make wine fun and make wine friendly. You go to certain places and it kind of can be a little bit stuffy or snooty or a little pretentious, and it's like, that's not what wine is supposed to be, right? Wine is supposed to be a beverage that you consume with dinner or with your friends or with your family or outside on the patio. It's very much a false environment to be swirling and sniffing a wine and going, oh, I'm getting, Marionberry, and that's just not how it is. It's usually you're with friends and you're having a pizza or you're having, some hors d'oeuvres and you're drinking a glass of wine with it and you're having fun. And we want people to be able to, they feel comfortable when they come in here, that it's not going to be stuffy, that we can talk to them like normal people about wine, right? And most people are not sommeliers, and they don't know the acid structure of a wine. Most people are just they come in and because they like wine, right? And so when they don't know the flavor profile of wine and they're not sure about the acid structure, I'm just like, do you like the wine? Is it thumbs up or thumbs down, right? Is it yummy or yucky? If it's yummy, great, let's move on. If it's yucky and you don't want to drink it, here's a dumb bucket. But it doesn't upset me, right? It doesn't make me mad if they go, oh, I really don't like this Chardonnay, it's not my style, there's no oak, there's no butter. I don't care, because I understand we all have different taste buds. We all like different things, right? My wife and I like different things. So there's wines that she's like, oh, I'm really crazy about this wine. And I'm like, oh, not so much, But it just is what it is. If we all like the same wine, we'd have one wine. We'd all drink the same one wine. And because we have different taste buds, we want to just respect everybody's taste buds. I have people that come in and they want mead, right? Like they like Moscato, and they're embarrassed. I'm like, what are you looking for? What can I help you with? Oh, I like sweet wines. I'm like, we have Moscato. You have Moscato? And they're like, well, my friends make fun of me. I'm like, I love Moscato. Cold, throw some frozen peaches in there, some sliced peaches. I love Moscato. And so I never even would think of, or my staff, belittling somebody about what they like for wine, right? Because they like what they like, and we want to have something for them. Now, we may not have, I don't have a Puffin Moscato, or I don't have a Puffin Mead, because that's not what we're showcasing, but I have some other producers. I have Honeywood, and one of Oregon's original wineries, right? We have their mead, and we are happy to tell the story of Honeywood and their mead. So, we want to help everybody, and we want to demystify wine. We want them to leave and have a good time, right? And go, that was fun. I didn't really like the Chardonnay, but man, I had fun in there, right? That's the idea.
Poor Chardonnay, always getting picked on.
So we make Chardonnay. I call it Chardonnay for people who don't like Chardonnay, because people say, I don't really like Chardonnay so much, and it's because they're thinking. To me, my thought is they're thinking of that oaky, buttery Chardonnay, right? And some people like that, but most people don't like that. And so we have a conversation about California Chardonnays versus Oregon Chardonnays, where we focus on the expression of the fruit and the cold climate Chardonnay, and it's more like a white Burgundy or Chablis than a Napa-based Chardonnay. And they'll taste it and they'll be like, oh yeah, I get what you're taking. I actually like this. That's why I call it Chardonnay for people who don't like Chardonnay. And it goes back to that education, but never belittling them when they say, "Oh, I don't like Merlot, I don't like Chardonnay." 'Cause or rosé. Those are like the three in our lineup that people say, "I don't like rosé." Well, why don't you like rosé? "Oh, I've had white Zinfandel, and oh my God, this is not white Zinfandel, right? Let's just give me a chance." And sometimes I'll joke with them when they say, "Oh, I'm just going to skip that and go to the next one." I'll be like, "Nope, I'm just going to wait right here till you agree to have rosé. Tell me when you're ready." "Okay, let's have rosé." And then they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is not what I was expecting. I was expecting it to be sweet." And I'm like, "Nope, that's not what we do here." So it gives us an opportunity to have that conversation, and I kind of play with them about that. Yeah.
So your shop has gotten some recognition, won some awards, got some recognition in GQ. Tell me about the impact of that, and I guess sort of the meaning of that to you.
Yeah, the GQ write-up and rating was several years ago, so I think that's kind of worn off. But we've been best wine shop on the coast a couple of times. We've been named one of Oregon's top 100 destinations in the state, which to me was outrageous, right? Oh, Multnomah Falls, Haystack Rock, Wine Shack. It's like, really? I only voted 20 times for that. No, I'm just joking. That was a surprise, but those are fun, and that tells me that we're on the right track and people are having fun and they're walking away going, that was pretty cool. We heard some good music, we had some good wine, we had a cheese board. Yeah, it was a nice way to spend an hour in Cannon Beach or some time in Cannon Beach. That's the whole idea, and I think that people when they read about those things and they read the reviews. They just kind of go, "Oh, that seems like a place that I'd like to try out." So I think those reviews help, but I think the more current ones, like what was the review that we got this weekend, right? That tells you what we're doing, and hopefully it was a good review. But the more recent reviews are the ones that when I'm looking into a place like a hotel, what are the reviews, or a restaurant, what are the reviews from the last couple of weeks versus 5 years ago or so. Yep. But it is nice. It is nice to get written up in various newspapers, or we've been in the Tribune, the Chicago Tribune, LA Times, GQ, Portland Monthly. I can't think of the magazine out of Seattle that wrote us up, but it's nice to get those write-ups. Eric Degerman writes us up in Northwest or Great Northwest Wine. So, yep.
So you talked about initial impressions of Oregon and of starting to build your collection here. Tell me about how you've seen Oregon wines or winemakers change in the time you've been here.
Well, we're seeing the turnover in generations, right? We're seeing wineries that were first-generation wineries and winemakers now going into second generations, and you have winemakers, like Kramer, where Trudy turns it over to the daughters to run Kramer. I love that. I absolutely love that. Kramer comes here and pour almost every year, and we started with Trudy, and now we have Becky, and it's a lot of fun to see that happen. We're also seeing them being sold. The properties being sold for a lot of money to out-of-state producers and out-of-state brands, and that's a little disappointing, but it's to be expected, right? Those types of changes happen. It's also interesting to see the next set of winemakers come up, right? The winemakers coming out of the various schools or apprenticeship at the various wineries, and they're going out on their own and kind of doing their thing. I love seeing that. Ed Fuss at Angel Vine, he shut down Angel Vine, but he was one of my favorite winemakers, just this great personality. I love Ed, and Joe Williams was his assistant winemaker, and they were also, they were Carlton Hill Cellars. I think they were Carlton Cellars. But seeing Joe start Deneau and take Deneau out and start building Deneau, I love seeing that. I love seeing those guys that have just really honed their craft under another winemaker, go out, branch off, do their thing, take on the world with their own brand. Yep.
Has the Pinot Noir changed since you've been here?
I don't know. I can't say that it has changed that much. There's just more of it, right? There are a lot of wineries. There are a lot more wineries than when I started in this 12 years ago, 13 years ago. There's a lot more wineries. So there's a lot more Pinot Noir. I'm seeing more emphasis on dry farming. I would say more emphasis on sustainable farming, which I'm excited in both of those things. But I don't know if there's been much change in Pinot Noir. I think that with the climate has, we've had some warmer summers, warmer growing years. I think that they've been more consistent. We haven't had the variety of weather. Like the first 4 or 5 years that I was here, we had warm, cold, rainy, and we had very different, but the last like 4 or 5 have all been kind of consistent. So I think that the wines are I think they're beautiful. I think the Pinots are beautiful. The biggest change I've seen since coming here is the Chardonnays. The Chardonnays have really become exceptional and world class. The wineries that are making these amazing Chardonnays, I just want to, cheer. And when I taste these Oregon Chardonnays, the other big thing I see is the sparkling, the growth of sparkling, and it makes perfect sense. If we can grow amazing Pinot Noir, we can grow amazing Chardonnay, we should be able to make amazing sparkling wines, and everybody's figuring that out, right? And sparkling wines, for the wineries, they get a premium on sparkling wines, and they deservedly so. So I'm really excited about where the Oregon wine industry is going. Yeah.
What do you see for the future of the industry? Are there any changes you're expecting or maybe hoping for?
I think kind of the direction that they're headed right now with the sparkling and the sustainable farming, I think those are great. It'll be interesting to see what happens as climate change impacts the Willamette Valley. We're already seeing some warmer spots develop in the Willamette Valley, and so we're seeing a little pop-up of Cabernet Franc or a little pop-up of Syrah, and we're seeing these things coming up. So it'll be interesting to see how winemakers adapt to that. Plus, consumer tastes are changing, right? We're not seeing as much Riesling. We're not seeing as much Pinot Gris coming out of the state. We're seeing more Chardonnay. So we're seeing, vineyards are coming out of Pinot Gris and Riesling, and they're being replaced with Chardonnay. So it'll be interesting to see how wineries adapt. Plus, there's a lot of wine, right? There's a glut of wine. So let's see how wineries adapt to that change in the marketplace. So we'll see. It's exciting to create new challenges for these guys. Yeah, the wineries are smart though. The winemakers are smart. The people running these wineries are smart. They'll figure it out. I have no doubt.
Let's talk about Puffin for a second then and its future. Obviously you mentioned a big evolution since you started it.
Yeah.
What's next for it? Where do you want it to go?
Well, I think where we're going to look at is a sparkling. It's because of the growth of sparkling wines and because of my friend Ray Walsh makes an amazing sparkling brut that there's an opportunity there. But I think we'll just keep our eyes on the customer tastes as well and kind of see what we have the good fortune of having thousands and thousands of tourists come through from across the country, and so it's a really good test market every day. We really see what are the customers. Sauvignon Blanc has blown up recently. Rosé has blown up recently. Syrah, not so much, right? So that's why you don't see a Puffin Syrah, even though John makes a gorgeous Syrah. We haven't added that because the demand for Syrah has dropped, that I've seen has dropped off. And so we'll kind of adapt to our customer tastes and what are they asking for us in the tasting room? Do you have it this? Do you have it that? And we'll look to make those adjustments.
And with the shop, where does it go from here? What have you not done that you want to do?
Boy, I don't know. I think the shop really reflects where I am and who I am and what I want the store to be. That's a great question. I don't know what's next for the store. We've kind of done what we can do with it. I'm happy with the store the way it is, and the feedback that we get on the store has been good. So I don't know. I don't know. We'll just kind of keep our eye on the market and see what's coming up and look for new producers, kind of like what we've been. But I don't have any plan for radical changes. We did that the first 5 years. We kept moving wine around and where is it best displayed and how is it best displayed and what do we do? Yeah, we don't have any curtains on windows. That freaks some people out, but people come and go, oh, you got direct sunlight on these bottles. Well, they're all treated. All the windows are treated in here, right? So trust me, I'm taking good care of these bottles. I own all these bottles. I want to make sure that they're all being well taken care of. And I think we'll just look to be good stewards of the store. My wife and I aren't going to own this store forever. You know, we got a couple more years before we retire, and we want to set it up for who takes it from us and moves it into the future. Just like we took it over from Dean and we put our touch on it, the person that, or the couple that buys it from us will take it over and put their touch on it, right? Their twist on it, make it match their personality.
Imagine being concerned about too much sunshine at the Oregon coast.
Yeah, you know, that's the other thing as well. The high is 64 today. I'm not so concerned about heat on the bottles, but I get people that, you know, and it's a justifiable question. Oh, you've got direct sun on these bottles. Yeah, they're all treated with zero, you know, the highest percentage. So we're protecting them from UV and from heat. But I did take curtains. There were curtains on all of them. But then in winter, it was really dark in here when you have curtains and it's, you know, very little sun because it's all gray in the first place. So I was trying to make the store more open and inviting, part of that. But protect the wine.
And for you personally, anything else in the future that you're excited about? Any projects on the horizon or things you're excited to try?
You know, I would say that just getting out and visiting more wineries, visiting some of the newer wineries. My wife and I are planning on going to Walla Walla this fall to do more of that, learn more of those wineries and what they got going on there. One of the fun side gigs I had for a while was jumping on a cruise ship and being the wine host for the cruisers for a week and giving the presentations every day. And then we would go into these different, you know, we'd go to, where we go into Hood River, the Dalles, Walla Walla, and we would just taste through these amazing wines, and I'd be able to give the presentation about these markets or these wine regions and what was their specialty in these wineries and what their specialties are. And those have changed, right? There's new wineries there. There's up-and-comers. There's still old favorites, but there's new wineries, and I look forward to getting out there and really getting to know them as well. So that's kind of what I was looking for, new wineries out there, new wine adventures in the Pacific Northwest.
Last question for you: greatest accomplishment or proudest achievement? What are you proudest of?
I think, other than being a grandpa to two fun grandkids, my wine achievement, I think, is the Puffin Wines. I think that when somebody reads about Puffin Wines, they usually read about Pinot Gris, and we've taken the top rating tier at the Platinum Wine Awards for the last 5 years. Not many wines can say that in the Pacific Northwest. And that's Ray Walsh. And that Ray is a good steward of that wine, but all the wines. And I think that, you know, just kind of staying on top of the wines and the winemakers and the vineyard sources that they're working with, and making sure that they're just still loving what they do. That's the key. The winemakers have to love what they're doing, right? And for us to have a successful Puffin program, the winemakers have to be happy with what's coming from me and what direction, you know, they're getting from here and the feedback they're getting from us. Because I tell them what you know, when the customers are not happy with something, and that happens every once in a while, I'll share that with them, like, hey, the customers are actually looking for a little more this. And that goes into the database for next vintage, right? So as long as they're happy with the relationship and how things are going and the feedback they're getting, I'm happy that they're my team. So I would say my greatest accomplishment is putting together the winemaker team and the Puffin lineup.
Excellent. All the questions that I have for you. Anything I didn't ask that I should have, or anything we didn't cover?
I appreciate you and your staff coming in today and doing this. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your time, sharing your store with us, and go ahead and let you off the hook.
All right.
Thank you.